Never want to be the person that stifles good conversation, but I was. So thank you all for being here today. Want to call to order our meeting of the Board of Trustees of the University of North Florida. Today is August 12th, 2021, and we appreciate everyone being here during the time that everybody else is we're getting the university ready to reopen. First thing I want to do today is to call on our new board member, Allie Shelton, and welcome her. We're certainly glad to have Allie. I suspect most of us know Allie from civic activities, her role with the city. She had a stint with the Florida Senate, always been very involved in the community. And as I told her when I learned of her appointment, her family has a real legacy with UNF. When I came on the board, her mother Joy was the chair. So Allie, as I said, it's full circle. I'm really glad you're here. Allie and I have worked together on a number of things and have always enjoyed it. And so I really look forward to working with you. As is customary, we'd like you to sing your alma mater fight song, please. But Allie, anything you'd like to say as you join us?
No, I'm just so honored that the governor appointed me, and I'm excited to work with all of you. And I know I'm excited to hopefully carry on my mother's legacy. She loved UNF, so thank you very much. And as I say, I'm here to work hard, so I look forward to it.
Great, thanks, Allie. Thanks very much. All right, as we do at every public meeting, this is an opportunity for public comment, and we do have some people who have requested the opportunity to public comment. Under our rules, public comment is limited to 3 minutes per individual, and I know we look forward to hearing from everyone who has requested public comment. So let's go ahead and begin that, and I'm looking for my order of that. Looks like Dr. de Villiers, and I probably mispronounced your name. Here we go. And I think we'll have public comment take place from the front. There we go.
So thank you for this opportunity to speak to the agenda items on UNF leadership, President Szymanski's performance, and future interim president. My name is Nicholas de Villiers. I'm the president of the UNF chapter of the United Faculty of Florida. We're hearing urgent concerns from faculty about the local COVID-19 pandemic surge and now outdated pre-Delta variant for the governor's SUS reopening plan. Faculty are concerned about a perceived lack of leadership in protecting the health and safety of our campus community. Our faculty members want UNF leadership to bring back our campus back into alignment with CDC guidelines for institutions of higher education with mixed vaccination populations like UNF. Student vaccination incentives, statements that we expect everyone to wear masks, are steps in the right direction, but they fall short of addressing the concerns that we are hearing from faculty. Faculty want their students, their families, and the community safe from infection, illness, and death. Our faculty are asking for the same flexibility to keep everyone safe and ensure continuity of instruction that worked well last year. In the email about President Szymanski's transition to CEO of MedNexus, we are told President Szymanski helped guide UNF through the COVID-19 crisis, minimizing the impact of this unprecedented pandemic on the university community. He also created a new leadership position in crisis management, along with diversity and inclusion, all reporting to the President. Faculty are indeed grateful for these efforts, but we hope that we can all recognize that the pandemic crisis is not over. We're not through it. In fact, it's worse than it's ever been right now in Northeast Florida. The impacts are still being felt, which is why impact bargaining is so important and urgent, including UNF's proposed MOU, UNF's proposed MOU, asking for flexibility for at-risk faculty and those who wish to follow UNF's own health and safety policies for preventing illness. We also don't want to damage UNF's aspirations as a healthcare leader in Florida by causing multiple super spreader events this fall. We're concerned that the Americans with Disabilities Act is being presented as the only option for faculty with concerns about risks to their children who are under 12 and thus not eligible for vaccines, or high-risk family members. The ADA was not designed for this. It was not intended to be a hurdle for faculty to clear. It was designed to promote access. We're also disturbed by what we're hearing from faculty regarding uneven, inconsistent responses to their requests. This is a recipe for bias and discrimination, and threatens to undermine the important steps towards diversity, equity, and inclusion celebrated in the letter that President Szymanski has term of UNF. Finally, I point you to the urgent calls for action in the change.org petition to keep our UNF community safe, addressed to the Board of Trustees and Upper Administration at UNF, which now has over 300 signatures, and the concerned community members peacefully rallying outside this building. We need courageous leadership right now to minimize the impact of this pandemic on our faculty. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. I just want to make a couple of points that the doctor brought up. One of the things was he referenced that we are currently in impact bargaining. There is a session scheduled for next Monday with our bargaining team. You know, as a board, we have the opportunity to provide input, not directly in the bargaining, but direction when called upon by our bargaining team. And I know they are meeting on August 16th to talk about precisely some of the issues that would arise. And it may be that in the coming weeks that we will be required to meet to give further direction and input on that. And certainly that's our responsibility, and I know that good faith bargaining is going on that. And I do want to comment and thank those members of the faculty who came earlier today and appeared outside and expressed their views. It's not only their right, but it's very healthy in our community that we get all of the views. So thank you for I want to acknowledge and thank you for that. And finally, Dr. Villiers referenced some materials. Andrea has been providing all of the board members any materials we receive from faculty members or whoever commenting on this and other topics. And so continue to look for that. I know I received some this morning. I think we all did. But we'll continue to have that flow of communication. Dr. Sarah Matisse.
Thank you for this opportunity to address the discussion. My name is Sarah Matisse, faculty member in the Department of Philosophy and Religious Studies, and I'm also a faculty excellence scholar for well-being, mindfulness, and meditation. Because of my experiences with faculty mental health and well-being, that I wanted to address you today. As you consider questions of leadership in these times of crises, I would ask that you think not only of virtues like courage or strength, but also compassion. In particular, compassion for faculty and staff. At the beginning of the pandemic, we all hailed teachers' efforts as extraordinary. That rhetoric quickly faded. But the extraordinary efforts have continued, taken a significant toll. Many faculty are exhausted, stressed, worried, anxious, sleepless. And like most of us, until a month or so ago, they were hoping that this fall would be better and pandemic conditions would improve. The letdown has been enormous. For many, there was no time of rest and recharge, and I'm concerned for them as we start this new year. I know faculty who have lost loved ones this last year, who have dealt with all this virus has to offer, from sickness or death to long-distance grief and more. Faculty who've become third-grade math teachers, elder caregivers, in addition to their full-time jobs. Faculty have learned new technologies, changed their entire way of working, redesigned and reimagined their courses, their scholarship, their creative work, and become the first line of support for students dealing with the various traumas brought on by this pandemic. For all of this, though, I would have said, we're in this together. UNF, unlike so many other institutions, did not force us, but worked with us. We were treated as partners, valued industry professionals, able to make the appropriate decisions for our own contexts. Now, in some respects, local circumstances are even worse than a year ago. Many faculty are stretched thin, balancing personal, familial, pedagogical, scholarly, and mentoring roles. As you consider questions of leadership, much is uncertain and out of your control, out of all of our control. Yet what I hear from colleagues is a small plea for control to what is possible. Colleagues saying, if only I knew students would all wear masks, I would have no problem being in the classroom, having them do small group exercises together. Or another, if I could decide how to use Zoom for this class just part of the time for part of the group, it would make all the difference. Yet that autonomy is no longer in our hands. Faculty mental health is a serious challenge right now. Your compassionate response, working with us in concrete terms, returning to CDC guidelines for mixed vaccination populations in areas of virus transmission like Jacksonville, and not just allowing, but encouraging faculty to use their expertise flexibly and creatively provide the best possible educational experiences for students. That's the leadership we need. Thank you.
Dr. Gellers? If any of my colleagues have questions or comments, feel free to speak up. Dr. Gellers, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. My name is Josh Gellers, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Political Science and Public Administration here at UNF. I come before you today to speak on item 7, consideration of appointment of interim president. During President Szymanski's tenure, UNF rose to the level of a national university and marketed itself as a leader in medical education and innovation, as evidenced by the creation of UNF Medical Nexus. There is perhaps no better stress test for this new designation and strategic emphasis than our university's COVID response. Months ago, when the university updated its COVID-19 guidelines, we were in a very different situation compared to where we are now. Currently, we are in the midst of a wave of new infections caused largely by the Delta variant, mostly among unvaccinated individuals, in a national epicenter for infection. Some of the very hospitals with which UNF is partnering through MedNexus have reached capacity due to new COVID hospitalizations, including an exponential increase in the number of children being hospitalized with the virus. Whomever is charged with taking over the responsibilities and duties of president will need to consider these factors as we transition to a fall semester that is completely different from the one we planned for only 2 months ago. In particular, it is vital that this person offer pathways that limit the disruption to our main service, education. This means providing faculty with the flexibility to conduct instruction in the safest manner possible, given the constraints under which we are now operating. For example, last year I taught one class with 10 graduate students. At the start of the semester, I wore a face shield, but did not wear a mask underneath. In late January, I tested positive for COVID. Suddenly, I was faced with a mandatory quarantine period. Immediately, I switched my entirely face-to-face class to remote instruction. Upon my return to class, I learned that 2 students also came down with COVID. I then decided to offer the class in 3 modalities for the remainder of the semester: in person, live streaming online, and recorded lecture. 1 student did not return to class. Everyone in her family was infected. Her mother later died from COVID. My experience is only one of many, but it highlights the severity of our current dilemma. COVID cases are at or approaching an all-time high in this area, and faculty will be entering classes completely unaware of the vaccination status of any of their students. While I applaud the university's recent announcement that it will offer positive incentives to students in the form of Aussie bucks to encourage vaccination, I strongly urge the interim president to consider allowing faculty the flexibility to offer instruction in a manner that reflects their unique circumstances. I have a 1-year-old daughter in daycare and a 72-year-old immunocompromised father. My work environment poses considerable risk to their lives. Let's be uniquely UNF for all the right reasons and extend accommodations so that our faculty can continue to provide instruction safely for our students and our families. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gellers. Before we go to Mr. Hartley, if he can start coming up, I failed to recognize the trustees and Joe Stilazar are on the phone as well. So thank you for joining us, Stephen and Chris. Mr. Hartley?
Good morning, Board of Trustees and guests. I'm Matt Hartley, Associate Director of the Interfaith Center here at UNF. I'm here to speak on agenda items 5 and 7. I want to congratulate President Szymanski on his new role and thank him for his actions that his administration has taken to protect our campus during the COVID-19 crisis. And as the President looks out on his last month, and as the Board of Trustees considers an interim president, I hope that we will see a continued strong leadership to meet this moment. Some of the realities that we're facing, you've already heard our previous speakers speak about, and you know too, you're hearing about our hospitals full, You're hearing about some of us with young kids who are going back to school and worried about them contracting COVID. And so as we're about to repopulate our campus, those of us, faculty and staff, who are thinking about how we can do this safely, we want to provide that world-class education to students. We want to provide that incredible campus experience, but we know that we can only do that if we're doing it safely. I want to speak particularly in support of flexibility. I support the faculty efforts in this regard, and I also ask that you think of staff as well, thinking about leave policies and remote work flexibility as we may see increasing infections on campus. Please think of staff and the flexibility that will help them continue to provide the best that we have at UNF, but with flexibility that meets this moment. I also want to advocate for communication with staff and faculty in a way that so that staff and faculty can feel that they know things are being worked on. I think some of us over the last month were worried about what measures were going to be taken. And I've been encouraged by some of the messages I've heard over the last several weeks, but we kind of felt like we didn't know whether any of those things are going to happen. And so I think going forward, it would be really helpful if faculty and staff had a sense that they were involved in knowing what's being worked on, so we can all have that shared responsibility. Because we're all in this together for our students and for this UNF community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. And finally, Dr. Hope Wilson.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Wilson. I'm an associate professor in the College of Education and Human Services, and also the recipient of the Vicki Cornett Chair Award this year from the College event. And I'm going to speak to agenda items 5 and 7, and I'm also to the specific concerns of my college, and also the College of Nursing. Our students are unique in that part of their experience that's wonderful at UNF is their field work and their exposure in the community and their ability to go out into the community. But this puts our students in uniquely vulnerable positions where they are definitely exposed to unvaccinated populations. Our elementary ed students are going into classrooms of all unvaccinated students, right? All under the age of 12. They go out to this local community, fairly contained, elementary school students, and then they all come back bringing back all those germs from all those different schools across our community. And then if they're in person together, share those germs and then spread them back out across Duval County, St. Johns County, Nassau County, and Clay County. And I'm worried, and I think we're all concerned, what effect that will have on our greater community. And I kind of urge that as we think about our reopening plans, we also think about the impact that UNF has on our greater community as a leader in Northeast Florida. I also want to share, I think we all know that the statistics and the numbers, but I want to give a personal story behind the numbers. Last May, my daughter was a student at UNF, and I got a phone call from the emergency room where she was being admitted for surgery for appendicitis brought on by COVID. And as a mom, I couldn't be there with her. She was sobbing as they were taking her away because she had to go alone and face the surgery without me there. And that is something that I wouldn't want anybody else in our community to have to go through. The fear that I had, the inability to be there with my daughter. And this was a mild case. This was something that had a really good outcome, and it was just appendicitis, and that's a very easy surgery, and she was fine, and she's doing great now. But the fear and I can't even describe how tremendous and heartbreaking it was for me as a mother, and that's something that I wouldn't want anyone else to have to go through in our community. And I know that our leadership also cares very much about families in our community. And I would hope that as we make decisions about the faculty being able to be flexible, our faculty are really smart people. I work with them daily, they're amazing. And I think that we know our students, we know the health risks, and we know what's best pedagogically, and giving us the flexibility of modality to address those health concerns would be my advice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson.
Right, John, I understand you may have something you wish to say.
Yes, Chairman Hyde, thank you. I have a statement. Chairman Hyde and members of the Board of Trustees, as a representative of the UNF faculty on the Board of Trustees, I feel compelled to make a statement about our current context and about the untenable position into which many of my educational colleagues have been placed. I fully recognize that members of the Board of Governors and even representatives from the Office of the Governor may be tuned into this meeting. I hope so, because it is primarily to them that I deliver this message. Florida is in a state of emergency. The most recent data show that Florida COVID infection rates have surpassed what they were at the worst of the pandemic last year. Our hospitals are at or above capacity, and emergency room physicians are warning that the problem will grow significantly worse. And this time around, our citizens are suffering from an even more virulent strain of the virus. To be clear, a wealth of data shows the Delta variant is far more contagious than the earlier variant, and that it can be transmitted both by the vaccinated and unvaccinated alike. In addition, it is also clear from scientific data that there are serious long-term effects from COVID infections for a significant number of people, and especially for children who contract the virus. Yet while real people are getting very sick, suffering ongoing effects of the disease and even dying, our state government has callously chosen to pretend that this crisis is fabricated or exaggerated. They have mandated and sometimes codified, and in some cases codified into law, regressive policies that allow the virus to flourish and that put our citizens and our students in danger. Nowhere is this more evident than in our schools. Fully half of the roughly 3 million students in our K-12 schools are not yet eligible for the vaccine. And many students in the 12 to 18 range remain unvaccinated, at least in part because their parents have been told by some politicians and some media organizations to distrust science. Despite these data, Governor DeSantis has forbidden school districts from mandating masks, a simple, inexpensive, and effective preventative. Further, he has promised serious financial sanctions for those district leaders brave enough to stand up to protect the children in their charge. He has threatened to withhold a percentage of future state funds to any non-compliant district. He has, in other words, promised to punish students because their teachers, principals, and superintendents enacted simple measures to protect children. Here at the state university level, the governor and the board of governors have taken a very similar stance. Our faculty and students have been told that we must return to normal this fall, meaning that most of our courses will be delivered face-to-face. At the same time, however, UNF and our 11 sister institutions across the SUS have been prohibited from mandating COVID vaccinations along with the myriad other vaccinations that our students must get. We've been prohibited from requiring COVID testing for students coming to live in our dormitories. We've been prohibited from requiring mask wearing in our classrooms and offices. And we have similarly been prohibited from changing the course delivery methods for faculty who may have small children, immunocompromised partners, or elderly parents at home. Through their mandates, the Board of Governors has expressed to our faculty and to our students that a return to normal is more important than our health or the health of our families. And much like we've seen in the K-12 realm, our universities have been told to expect serious financial ramifications, retribution, if you will, if we attempt to do the ethical and safe thing of ignoring some or all of their mandates. To put it bluntly, educators in the state of Florida are being subjected to a kind of extortion. We can choose to do what is right for our community and what science advocates, or we can risk a major loss in funding, which in turn means the loss of student opportunities, teacher jobs, and faculty jobs. In total, this is an example of the worst kind of partisan politics. It puts a political agenda that is decidedly non-data driven above the welfare of our students and our educators. As a faculty member who loves his students, his colleagues, and UNF, I implore the Board of Governors and the Governor himself to set aside this political gamesmanship and to do the right thing for our students and their teachers. By the right thing, I mean follow the science. In our current context, this means mandating vaccinations, it means requiring masks until the pandemic is under control, and it means promoting scientific data over misleading hyperbole. Our teachers, whether they be in K through 12 schools, our state colleges, or here at our state universities, deserve better. Even more importantly, our students, the future of our state and the future of our nation, deserve better. It is time for our leaders, all of us, to do the right thing. Thank you, Mr. Hunt.
Thanks, Trustee White. And thank you for all who came to speak to us. It's great to have everyone out. One of the things all of us have is our individual views, and I appreciate everyone expressing them. And John, thank you for your comments. We as a board, of course, are obligated to consider all views, but also to follow the law, which I know all of us are committed to doing. And so as we approach this problem, that's the spirit in which I know this board will approach it. This is a problem that's facing our state, and our leaders, including us, will work together toward a good end. But of course, as part of the state university system, we are required to follow the Board of Governors, the Executive Office of the Governor, the legislature, all who are involved in this, and I know we will all approach it in that spirit. And again, thank you all for coming. We have a few business items to get to, so we'll move to those. Let's turn now to we have some new DSO members. And I think we'll turn to Vice President Scott Bennett for our first on this, for TSI. And I think we're going to be showing things on the screen here.
That's on. That'd be very loud. So we have two directors that are coming forward with two separate DSOs. I will say that both of these directors have already been approved by their respective boards. The first one, I think everyone probably knows, Tony Arenavis is being nominated to sit on the TSI board. He is currently also on the foundation board. I think most people are familiar with Tony. He also loves industrial. Any questions on this one?
Do you want to take these approvals?
I think we do separately.
Okay. So I think Scott did indicate all of us do know Tony, work with you. Do we have a motion for approval of Tony? Moved by Trustee Nyborg. Do we have a second? Okay, second by Trustee Patel. Any discussion or questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, Tony is approved. Thank you. All right, for the financing court?
And the next one is nomination of Julie LeMay to the financing court. Julie is a new nomination. She comes to us, as you can see on the screen, the office managing partner for Grant Thornton here in Jacksonville. She comes highly recommended and very familiar with the other financing committee members as well.
All right, do we have a motion for approval? Okay, motion by Tom. Brian, second? Second by Trustee Patel. Okay. And also by Trustee Jones. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. It is approved. Thank you. And we'll certainly reach out to Tony and Julie and thank them for their service, and we'll have a chance to work together with them. Thanks, Scott. Let's turn to item 4 now. This is a conflict of interest regulation. We had a previous discussion about this at our March 15th meeting, and so this is a follow-up on that. Let me turn it to Assistant Vice President Guth on this.
Thank you, trustees. Good morning. As you mentioned, you may recall that I presented a preview of the pending revisions to the university's conflict of interest and outside activity regulation back in March to the Audit and Compliance Committee. Today, I'm requesting your approval of the conflict of interest regulation changes. Please feel free to interrupt me if any questions arise during our presentation. So you have the copy of the proposed revisions in your board packet and on board. We made some significant changes to the university regulation. We included a reference to the state of Florida Code of Ethics for public officers and employees, which was an important point. We expanded disclosure obligations, including a new annual requirement at the beginning of each fiscal year, indicating that the employee has no conflicts or outside of employment or activity to disclose, or disclosing conflicts that may exist. We added a new requirement from Florida Statute 1012-977, which was related to the disclosure of activities related to research with the potential to affect the integrity of we added a section on penalties for failure to disclose, which is also reflected in statute 1012-977. In addition, we expanded the definitions for conflict of interest. We incorporated conflicts which arise as referenced in the UNF regulations on employment of relatives, as well as the amorous or sexual relationship policies. We also replaced duplicative intellectual property language with a reference to the UNF policy on patents, copyrights, and other intellectual property. That policy was updated in April of 2020. In addition, we clarified language in the objective and purpose section, describing how this university's regulation is relative to the collective bargaining agreements, indicating that any terms of applicable collective bargaining agreements will govern as long as the bargaining agreement is compliant with Florida law. I'll speak more on collective bargaining agreements in just a few moments. So we have 3 collective bargaining agreements here at the university. AFSCME, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. PBA, the Coastal Florida Police Benevolent Association. And UFF, United Faculty of Florida. So as I just mentioned, where the collective bargaining agreements have language related to conflict of interest, those collective bargaining agreements will govern. The AFSCME CBA is silent on conflict of interest, so we would refer back to the university regulation. The PBA CBA does have a dedicated article, Article 19, related to conflict of interest in outside activity or employment. We have a proposed revision in progress for this year's collective bargaining sessions that will align the PBA CBA with the UNF regulation. United Faculty of Florida CBA also has a dedicated article related to conflicts of interest in outside employment. We have a proposed revision in progress that's been prepared for this year's full book bargaining, which will align to the UNF's regulation proposed changes. It will incorporate requirements under Florida Statute 1012-977 for disclosure of employees engaged in the design, conduct, or reporting of research, and those penalties for non-disclosure, which could include suspension without pay pending an outcome of an investigation, or it could include termination of employment. The collective bargaining agreement with UFF is relative at this very moment because the existing agreement contains language that differs from the university's regulation. Until it gets amended through the negotiation process, that collective bargaining agreement does govern. As I said, we have a proposed revision that's prepared for this year's full book bargaining. So we intend to bring that collective bargaining agreement article in line with this university's proposed regulation. As you know, all collective bargaining agreements do come to the trustees for approval, so the board will be able to review and object to any provisions in the CBA as you see necessary. Next slide, please. Our work is not yet finished on conflicts of interest. We are in the process of developing reports on the conflict of interest disclosure forms, which includes a compliance audit for identifying those employees who fail to submit their annual disclosure, even if they have no conflicts to disclose. We'll also have reports to identify the types of conflicts that are disclosed, the trends across departments or divisions, and how we've mitigated those risks. In addition, we're working on developing the infrastructure to store attachments that are submitted with the disclosure forms, which would include the risk mitigation plans or management plans, for example, in a document retention software platform called OnBase that we currently employ here on campus. Finally, we're developing training for supervisors, chairs, deans, and others on how they can review the disclosure forms, what to look for, and sample questions to help guide the dialogue with the employee on what to report to them. Yes, sir? Thank you. We intend to have this training available in the learning management system as an online class that can be taken when convenient, and also offer more interactive sessions that are instructor-led. Next slide, please. That's all I have for you today. Do anyone have any comments or questions for me?
Vice Chairman McElroy.
Mr. Chairman, firstly, thank you very much for addressing the CBA language and clarifying that. That gives me great comfort as the board approves both documents both this month as well as each one of the CBA agreements. And secondly, having spent some time on 1012-977 in the past life, I'm wondering if there's any value here to create an addendum to this regulation so that is clearly stated and available for folks to review.
And that would be just having a copy of the relevant statute.
Yes,
So we know
yes.
exactly. Yeah, I think that makes it a good idea, so it's readily accessible. Are there other questions before we move to a motion or any conversation about this? If not, we'll entertain a motion for approval of the conflict of interest regulation as just explained. We have a motion by Trustee McElroy. Do we have a second? Second by Trustee Bryan. Any other discussion about this? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, it passes. All right, thank you. And thank you for the detailed explanation of that. I know it's been a substantial amount of work. Trustees, we're going to turn to item 5 right now. This is the annual presidential evaluation. This is one of the things that we are required as a board to do. We adopted a policy in January of 2019, which is updated with our particular responsibility. And the reason I note this is one of those areas where this is a uniquely board-related activity as we consider the evaluation of our president. And the period of time that we're looking at now is this most recently completed year, which goes from July 1 to June 30th, July 1, 2020 through June 30th of 2021. And obviously, it was an unusual year in many, many respects. We are required to do this evaluation within 90 days of the completion of that year, which we obviously are doing today. I have given you and asked a number of items to be distributed to you, most of which were required by our policy. So you should have received, and I know that you did, the presidential evaluation policies, which is what I'm reviewing now. Each year the president sets goals, and so you should have a copy of the goals. There's a summary of those goals as well, the 7 goals that President Szymanski gave to us. A copy of his annual self-report, you have received a copy of that. And then as chair, pursuant to our policy, I prepared an initial draft of that evaluation, and then I turn it over to you all for review and discussion. So with that information, I know you all have received and have had an opportunity to review. We'll open it up for discussion in terms of the annual evaluation. The process that I went through in preparing that draft evaluation included not only my own personal evaluation, but a review of the president's goals, a review of his self-evaluation, and I had an opportunity to speak to the chair of the Board of Governors, Sid Kitson, who was with us last week. And I think everyone is here, perhaps Chally, I'm not sure you had a chance to hear it, but as President Szymanski is transitioning to a new role, you heard very publicly Sid Kitson's evaluation of the performance of President Szymanski during that time. All of that will be considered as we go through this draft evaluation and then be finalized. I'll take your comments and we'll finalize the evaluation and present it to President Szymanski. So with that, let me open it up for any discussion on this. And our action item would be to have this evaluation, come to some consensus, and then I'll move forward from that. So do we have any discussion on the draft evaluation? Yes, Trustee Brown.
I do like one of our speakers said something very important. Our business is education. And I will say that again, and I reiterate my comments from last week's meeting. Over the past 3 years, under Dr. Szymanski's leadership, we've gone from having issues facing us like one stop to others that are not an issue anymore. And I appreciate and say how much we all appreciate his hard work through this.
Other comments?
Chairman, I just would reflect on the last year, the COVID challenge. I think under President Szymanski's leadership and the rest of the team did an outstanding job on that. The metrics, the focus on that with improvement points, I think was significant. We addressed through Dr. Szymanski's leadership the many social events that occurred in the last 12 months, I think in a very positive, constructive way, and put foundations in place for us to continue to improve in that area, create a more inclusive environment on campus. And I think that one of the key points that I recall back just over the last 12 months, the level of engagement between the President's office, Dr. Szymanski, and faculty certainly showed the improvement in the last 12 months. I think that was very valuable.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, go ahead. If you remember last year at this time, I brought up a concern about the connection with faculty, the president's connection with faculty. I want to echo what Mr. McElroy said. This last year, the president has tirelessly reached out to connect with faculty in so many ways, and faculty appreciate that. So I just wanted to put that out there that we really appreciate all your efforts to reach out to us. He's made himself readily available for so many meetings, so we really appreciate it.
Other comments? Well, I don't want to belabor what's in the evaluation, but I do want to state publicly, particularly since, as we know, Dave is transitioning to a new role, thank he and the entire team for the response to COVID. Our speakers even acknowledged it's been a collaborative effort, so when I compliment Dave as part of his evaluation on that, I'm really extending it to every level of the university. He has led a team, assembled a team, particularly under Von Greenlaw's direction, that I think has had a good response, and we know it's an evolving response. But one of the things that I wanted to highlight in the evaluation and compliment the president on is that the president is the leader, but he also works with a leadership team, and the leadership team that is now working together is almost wholly one that Dave assembled. And I think without fail, not only the creation of new positions, such as our diversity position and our vice president for jobs, but in our current positions, put top-notch people in them, in those positions, and allow them to work. And I think that is a sign of leadership that allows good people to do their jobs, and I appreciate Dave doing that. We've had some discussion about metrics, and we had a very robust presentation about it in June. We've seen great improvement in metrics. There is still work to do, because one of the things is we are one of 12, and it's a moving target always, but I know the focus is clearly there, and I appreciate that great attention on that. So in sum, I would entertain any suggested revisions or comments to this particular draft of the evaluation. And if not, I'll review it again. We'll have an opportunity to finalize it, and then the president and I will sit down and have the formal evaluation. But thank you all for your review of the material in advance, and also at this time. Anything you'd like to say, President Smansky?
I don't think you should ever give the microphone to the president, but I really just want to thank everybody who's on the board for all their support through this pandemic. It really has been important for us to continue, as Chairman Hart said, continue to evolve and continue to brainstorm, try to figure out how we're going to keep everybody safe. It's still our number one priority. It always has been, always will be. But we do have a great team, and it really is a team effort. It's taking this collective effort of really, 17,000 students and all our faculty and all our staff to create a safe campus, and we'll continue to march forward and make sure that everybody's as safe as we possibly can. But I really appreciate the support that we receive from everybody. We really appreciate the faculty and their commitment, dedication, perseverance, because our students really need them today, and really need them to lead. And so thank you for all that they do. And our students and our student representation have been phenomenal, and really put our students against any students who come across the country in terms of their responsibility and their caring attitude, the sense of family that they have, and the sense of dedication that they have with this institution. So it's been it's an honor and pleasure, to be in this chair. But it's a servant leadership model, and you're here to serve others. And so whatever we can do, we will continue to do to make this a fantastic, continue to make it a fantastic institution. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Let me turn now to item 6, and I'm going to turn to Vice President Stone. Item 6 emanates from the contract that we have with President Smansky. So Vice President Stone, please turn to you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure it's on.
I'm pretty lost, so I think we'll be okay. Just a reminder to the board, and primarily for the benefit of the new board members, the president's contract provides that annually the board does consider an award of incentive compensation based on terms that were negotiated at the time that we selected President Smansky as our leader. So we wanted to remind the board that this is a contractual matter. This year, President Smansky is eligible for incentive compensation of up to $85,000. These monies, just to make sure everybody understands, are not paid from any state source. These are non-state funds that are from our private direct support organizations that are budgeted annually as part of this overall package. Also, for the benefit of those who are new to the board, this is our third year of going through this process with President Szymanski, and in past years he has received the full award of his incentive compensation. I'm happy to answer any questions, just wanted to provide that context and remind everyone of the contract provisions here. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions of Vice President Stone? So as not to create a void, even though the chair typically doesn't make a motion, it is my recommendation to this board, and I would entertain a motion to this effect, that the president receive the full amount of the incentive compensation as required or as called for in his contract, which is in this year would be the amount of $85,000. Now we open it up for discussion or a motion. Trustee Patel? Okay, we have a motion by the voice from the box to Trustee Jones.
And I'll second that.
Okay, and second by Trustee. Okay. Any comments or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. And thank you for your work, Dr. Szymanski, very much. The next and final item I will tell you is bittersweet. Bittersweet is in, as I expressed last week, I have really enjoyed working with Dave in his role as president and look forward to all of us continuing to work with him in his role with MedNexus. But it's also very exciting for me. As you see from the materials which I presented, it is my recommendation, that's all it is at this point, because we want to consider whoever this board might wish, but it is my recommendation that Dr. Pam Chally be appointed as interim president. And I want to briefly explain to you why. It is not only because of my friendship with her over many years. I actually met Pam on a Leadership Jacksonville trip many years ago, and we started talking about my career in the law, and her son is a lawyer, actually, until recently was a law partner with Nick's brother at the same firm in Atlanta. And so we kind of got friendly on that basis. But then as I became more involved in UNF, and given our particularly strong role in the healthcare community, and particularly our College of Health, where Pam served as dean for many years, as I was thinking about who I might recommend to you all, she quickly came to mind. The other reason for that is you'll notice from her CV, which you have in your package, is she has a long relationship with UNF. And as we're in a period of time of transition, particularly with all the continuing issues we're talking about with COVID and things, I thought depth of knowledge of UNF was really important. And so, the idea of bringing someone who has that experience, Pam not only served as the dean, but most recently as the interim provost, very recent experience, and so I think she can come back with the ground running. And finally, I think that, Pam is the type of servant leader that Dave just referred to, that this institution appreciates and is accustomed to, and I think she will fulfill that role. Because one of the things I think all of us feel very passionate about is we are not standing still. We are not pausing during this time that we will begin a search thereafter. There is a distinct time to move forward. So in addition to those comments and having her CV, you have in your materials a copy of the proposed contract for her. A couple of comments about that. It's very straightforward, but one of the things that we think is particularly important is that we contractually, if this board were to approve it, would be asking Pam to bring forward to us goals in the very near future. Very similar to the way that we asked Dave to come to us each meeting with an update on the goals that he had set for the year. And we thought that was very important, that even on an interim basis, it is extremely important to do that. As we had discussions with Pam about the compensation of this contract, a couple of things to note. We benchmarked against prior interim contracts within the state university system. The most recent that we were able to benchmark against was Dr. Robinson at FAMU, and the compensation that Pam, she and I had discussed is actually slightly lower than that, not only in terms of the annual salary, but also this contract does not call for some emoluments that might otherwise be in some other contracts that you saw. And then we benchmarked against UCF, and obviously that's a different size and scale of institution somewhat, but those were the two recent models that we were able to look at. Other than that, the contract is very straightforward. It is anticipated that Pam would serve up to a year or less, depending on when the appointment of the newly elected or newly selected president would be actually taking office. And Pam is committed to seeing this through for whatever period of time that would be at this point. So with that, let me see, first of all, if you have any questions about my recommendation for her appointment, or certainly entertain any other suggestions you might have. This is our time for open discussion. All right. Sure.
You know, I looked at Pam's CV and I saw her middle initial was S. I thought it more appropriately be an O for Osprey. She has dedicated an enormous amount of her time and career to UNF and has wonderful experience in both the academic arena, administrative, and leadership. And I think what we heard earlier today, one of the big issues facing us is continuing to wrestle with COVID. And so having a strong medical background certainly would be helpful in terms of her leadership should she pass the vote.
Trustee Brown.
Mr. Chairman, I want to voice my thanks for her selection too, her recommendation. She's been terrific. Every time I reached out to her, she was always so welcoming and helpful in my gearing up for this position. So I can't think of anyone better to serve. And I do like the idea that what you said is, and I've been in a number of interim situations, and things do, traditionally there's almost a pause. And I do like the idea of us looking at this and saying there is no pause. We can't afford to have that. And so I like the idea of also having goals for Dr. Chally to set. So for us and for us to be a part of that, because we're not standing still. Again, I go back to our business as education. We're in unusual circumstances, for sure, but we just cannot stand still. We have to move this university forward, and this is our opportunity. So I'm very much impressed with your selection.
Other comments?
Chairman, to put some context here, I think it's important to remember that we're in a situation in which things have happened very quickly and we are in a crisis mode. So there hasn't been quite the time to take public feedback from faculty, students, and staff about an interim appointment. I will say I think that the selection of Dr. Chally as the interim president has alleviated many of those fears of less impact or less ability to get their opinions on her appointment, because she is such a tireless advocate for UNF. So I want to say I'm grateful that she came back. I hope that it's not like a Michael Corleone situation where you keep pulling her back in, but I do want to welcome her and thank her for coming on with us.
In terms of bringing back, Pam actually flew back from vacation. She just flew back from Chicago last night, Pam, and so that shows her commitment and desire. All right, hearing no other comments, do we have a motion for approval of Dr. Pam Chally as the interim president of UNF?
I vote it.
Okay, motion by Trustee Lazara. Do we have a second? Second by, Trustee Selma, appreciate that. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It is approved unanimously. And just by the way, before we applaud, and I hope we do, we will be bringing this to the Board of Governors at its next meeting at the end of this month, or actually I think it's September 1st, where this will be confirmed or considered for confirmation, but our intent is to bring it forward. And as we talked about last week, the timing of this, Dave will serve in the capacity through September 17th, and Pam would assume the role on September 18th. All right, now let's applaud our interim president. Sure, please do.
I was going to be back here, but I'm going to come up here. First of all, I want to congratulate you, President Szymanski, on your accomplishments, on everything you've done for this university, and the new role that you're going to be taking come September 18th. Most of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity. Honestly, I'm very humbled, I'm very honored, and I'm also very, very committed. Yes, I do have a long history at UNF. I've been at UNF now for 28 years, and I've had many, many roles at this institution. You all saw my CV, so you know I was dean for 19 years. That's a long time to be dean, let me tell you, in the same college. 19 years, sincerely enjoyed the opportunity to work as provost, interim provost. But what I want to talk about, just very briefly, are my last 2 years. Because the last 2 years, I've had the opportunity to serve as a faculty member. And I have to tell you, I would have been a much better dean and a much better provost had I more recently also been a faculty member. It was such a joy and such a privilege for me because it reminded me of why I went into this in the first place. The opportunity to be able to influence, in my case, nurses and also leaders as they move into their chosen career. I learned so much, as I mentioned before. You know, when I was dean and interim provost, I always said that I was a kept woman. And what I meant by that was that people did things for me. I didn't have to worry very much about technology. Had these wonderful support staff. And then suddenly I became a faculty member and they were gone. And then we went remote. It was really an opportunity to learn how to be able to teach with technology. It was an opportunity, though, probably most importantly, to be able to further understand what students are experiencing, their situations, and how we might be able to support those. Why would I consider this role? My husband has certainly asked this question, but I'll tell you 2 reasons. The first one is because I truly do love UNF. I love the university, the students, the staff, and certainly the faculty. And the second reason is because I believe I can lead teams that will further our influence and support student success. So that's why I'm interested, and I thank you so, so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. And Trustee Jost, if you're still on the phone, I want to clarify your motion included not only approval of Pam as appointment to the interim president, but also the contract which was in our packets. Is that correct? That is correct. Okay. Just want to clarify that that was the motion on the table. So we have not only the appointment approved, but also the contract as well. Well, it's been an exciting day. Again, let me thank everybody who came and in all of the very good discussion that we had, both in our public comment and among ourselves. Trustee Brown?
Yeah, can I say something? I think we all owe you a debt of thanks too, Kevin. I have to tell you, I mean, going through this again, all you've done behind the scenes, all of us owe you many thanks. You worked tirelessly for this on behalf of this university and on behalf of this board and our staff and our teachers and everyone. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
It's a pleasure to work with the entire UNF community, particularly all of you, my colleagues on the board. Anything further we need to discuss? With not, we are adjourned. Thank you.